All right, all right, all right. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I am James Oliver Jr., co-founder and CEO of Kabila. Kabila connects overlooked founders to capital and each other. Kabila is currently raising a $5 million investment fund to invest in the founders in our community and in our ecosystems. We also have a co-founder matching app if you're looking for a co-founder, and we nurture founders in our community for better business outcomes. And we have a special guest here today who I'll introduce in a second. In the meantime, if you could just, if you're listening, we're streaming on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter, all the places. Let us know in the comments where you're coming in from. That'll be great so we can say hello. And yeah. Oh, also, finally, if you could share this with your followers on social media so we can have some other founders join this really important conversation today. And today we have a special guest, Stephen Plappert. Stephen is co-founder and CEO of Forecastr. I actually met Stephen when I was going through Techstars Austin in the fall of 2022. Forecastr is an out-of-the-box finance function for your business that helps you make better decisions and succeed in fundraising. And today, Stephen is going to help you give you some tips about how you can use financial modeling to raise capital. What's up, man?
Yo, hey James, how's it going, man?
Okay, y'all. So look, Stephen popped in the green room. I'm like, "Are you wearing a tuxedo?" He said, "Yeah." What's the tuxedo about, bro? Like, what is that?
Well, it's a three-piece suit. It's not a tuxedo, and it's three-piece Thursday. All right, it's Thursday. It's also a leap day today. It's a special day. It's February 29th. Only comes around once every 4 years. But I wear a three-piece suit every Thursday. I call it Three-Piece Thursday as an ode to professionalism. So, yeah, you're catching me on my good day here, James.
I mean, you say three-piece Thursday. I'm like, I get some fries and a biscuit with the three-piece. Like, no.
Nope, just the three-piece. You just get me and the three-piece. Is that not enough? Is that not enough?
This is a first, man, and I love it, man. All right, y'all. So again, just drop in the comments. Let us know where you're coming in from, and we'll do our best to get your questions answered. And we're gonna get right into this. So I explained what Forecastr is, Stephen. If you want to, in your own words, like how would you describe Forecastr?
Yeah, I would say that Forecastr it's a spectrum. What Forecastr is, at the minimum, it is an online financial model for your startup, and at the maximum, it is like a fully outsourced finance team for your startup. And there's kind of everything in between, right? But it's software and it's expert humans, and like our whole reason for existence is to like help founders hit their revenue goals, maintain a healthy run rate, and raise capital more effectively, through the power of a great financial model, which is something that people used to do in Excel and is kind of painful in Excel, and now can do with Forecastr.
Yeah, it is painful. it's hard. It takes a lot of time. All right, well, cool. Well, let's get right into this. I feel like so we're talking about 3 tips to help you use your financial model to raise capital. I'm really keen to get your thoughts because we had to go back to the drawing board once we finished Techstars. The whole entire ecosystem shifted, and the story that we were telling simply wasn't storying. So we basically had to go back to the drawing board with our business model, et cetera, which was the financial model piece of it. But so let's start. What's your first tip to use a financial model to raise capital?
Yeah, that's my first tip, is that like you want to tell your story with numbers because, well, I'll just say this, right? Like fundraising is a storytelling exercise, right? I think you mentioned it right there. The story isn't storying; it's a storytelling exercise. That's the game we're trying to play. Is like telling a story that's convincing, that's ultimately going to lead to an investor, getting bought in and writing a check. And a lot of people, when they think of their financial model, they think of like, oh, the value of it is like the numbers and the output that the investor is going to do a bunch of number crunching on, and that's not really the values. And so the first tip is like, think of your model as a story that you're telling. Think of it as what I call a numerical narrative. your model really is no different than your pitch deck. It's the exact same thing as your pitch deck. It's just telling your story from like a different angle. It's telling it from a numerical angle. But be in that kind of storytelling mode when you're thinking about your financial model, because your model does tell a story. It tells the story of like how you acquire customers and how you monetize those customers and how you scale your team and when you hit certain revenue milestones and how you become this like big monster company. And so really for the when it comes to using a model in a fundraising environment, it's all about storytelling. And I think thinking about it that way is novel for a lot of founders to kind of reframe their mind on like how to approach a model when you're gearing up for a raise. You really want to be thinking of your model as like, okay, this model should be telling a story. What story is this model telling? And is this model backing up my story? Is it like reinforcing the story that I'm telling in the pitch deck? Because it all needs to be consistent and cohesive. So maybe if I had to put a tip on it, I think the tip would be like, think of your financial model as a story, right? And like, what does that unlock?
Yeah. So I couldn't have planned this any better. Because I want to play a clip, which was a hot take from Anastasia Simon, who was the investment principal for Techstars Atlanta. She did inside of our Kabila community. We had a workshop. She did pitch practice for some of the founders in our community, which is great because they write millions of dollars of checks here at Techstars Atlanta. Getting somebody who actually writes checks to give you feedback when the stakes are low was super helpful. But she said this. So I'm going to play this, and I just want to get your take on it. Okay, stand by.
That's actually not your business model, just so y'all know. James, you're a finance guy. Your business model is what? An Excel spreadsheet. It's actually the money. It's the money. That's why I don't tell people, I don't say business model anymore. I say, tell me how you make money. Where does the money come from?
Yeah.
Because people think business model just means, well, we're doing B2B and we're doing B2C. Oh, great. That tells me nothing. How much does this cost? Your business model is all that stuff that talks about like your churn. It talks about like your cohort analysis. All of that is your business. It's the spreadsheet is the actual business model. So tell me how you make money.
Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think tell me how you make money. That's a great way to phrase it. I mean, that ultimately is, what kind of a business model is all about. That's what your financial model is all about. Is telling that story. Telling the story of like, how do you make money, and not just. And there's two frames of it. There's like, how do you make a single dollar, right? Which is like the kind of what I would say the unit frame of it is like, how does your business work? And then like, how do you make a crap load of money? It's those two questions, right?
Yeah.
It's like, how does your business work and how does your business scale?
Yeah.
I think that is ultimately the story that you're trying to tell. I think if you can convince an investor that like you understand how to make a dollar, right? You understand how your business works and how it's going to generate revenue, and you understand and have a plan for how you're going to scale that up to a materially large business, it's highly likely that you'll get funded.
Okay. So before you get into your second tip, but if I'm jumping ahead here, just let me know. I'll stand down. But I question financial modeling is very intimidating. Most people don't even really know what that is. They just know that they got to hire an accountant or a CFO finance person to do this for them. Like I was able to do our financial model. I have an accounting degree and I have an MBA that's pretty heavy finance. I'm very comfortable with all that, but because of my ADHD, it actually makes my head hurt. But how does Forecastr, or does it, if at all, help founders who are just like, you know what, I don't know what financial modeling is. Like, how do I do that?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that's why we built Forecastr, really. Like, I mean, that's the experience through which I built Forecastr. Like before, like I started a different Techstars company years ago. I ran it for 3 years through Techstars Austin and failed it in 2016. And then I spent 4 years just like working with a lot of Techstars and other founders, building and managing financial models for them out of Excel. And it's because of just what you just said. Financial modeling's a technical exercise, and not everybody has the expertise they need to have success in that. And they're not really getting a lot of benefits, in Excel, where it kind of you have to be an expert almost to build a great model in Excel. I think that's really what the power of Forecastr is. It's like the software alone just really standardizes the experience. I think it makes it much easier for, a founder that is not a finance expert to actually build a financial model. But that's why we give every single one of our customers a financial analyst. Like we're a human-led business. Like we give everybody a financial analyst that works with them, hand in hand to build their financial model and manage their financial model. So that you do have that expert, because you can't be great at everything.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's so cool, because I said, a story wasn't storying. I had to go back, and like Anastasia said, like the business model is the financial model basically in some ways, and I had to go back from the bottom up in the model and figure out at the end of the day if this story is now storying, as I said before. And it's a lot, and I'm just really excited to hear you talk about forecasting this way, standardizing and making it easier, and then a financial analyst to help people out. I think that's cool. So again, out there, if you're out there listening or watching, please share this with your friends and followers on social media. If you have a question, please drop it in the comments. We will definitely do our part to get to you. And if you're wondering why in the heck Steven's wearing a tuxedo, he said it's a 3-piece suit, not a tuxedo. He said it's 3-piece Thursday. He wears a three-piece suit every Thursday, and I love it. I'm here for it.
Can't make this stuff up.
Yeah, I hear 3-piece. I'm thinking like wings and a biscuit, chicken, original, crispy. That's what I'm thinking. Anyway, all right. What's your second tip to use a financial model to raise capital?
All right, second tip. So first tip, is like think of your financial model as a story. So kind of like a conceptual tip. Second tip is going to get more into the tactical, and that's going to be tease investors with financial projections. So this is my tip for how to use your model in your pitch deck, because like I said, like your model and your deck, they are just expressions of the same narrative, right? One's more charismatic, one's more numerical. So you want to kind of bring those two things together in the deck, right? Your model should have representation in the deck, and the representation it should have is one slide, a financial projection slide, where you're just putting like an annual summary income statement. So very simple financial information up on the screen is how we like to play it. And you're just teasing the investor with ultimately the output of your financial model. Your financial model is going to spit out a set of financial projections, and you just want to put that annual summarized income statement on a slide, so that you have that output to kind of flash in front of an investor. That's our thesis, because like you ultimately want to signal to an investor in your pitch that, hey, like you're not all sizzle, right? There's some real meat behind the company. Like you've really thought through the company, you have a plan, and you're prepared to communicate that plan to the investor. And just flashing this annual summary income statement, this financial projection slide, it's a really great way to signal to an investor, hey, you've thought through the financial aspect of the company. And it's also a really great way, which will lead us to the third tip, of converting the investor into a secondary meeting.
Okay, don't do the third tip yet.
Investors. I won't. I'm not throwing the third tip out there, but
okay,
I'll tell you.
No, I love that. So I'm putting this up. Janae said she loves the Thursday look and vibe.
It's a raise funny vibe here today.
Oh my god! Thank you for that comment, Janae. That's fantastic. All right, so you talk about putting that in the deck. 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, like
5 years. 5 years.
5 years.
5 years for sure. For
And
sure.
at what stage you talking about? You're like seed stage, pre-seed, like
any stage, every stage. Got to be 5 years. 5 years, because when you're pitching an investor, it's important to recall the simple fact that like they're not investing in today's business. They're investing in the future state of your business. And if you can't paint the picture, tell the story of what the future state of your business is, they have nothing to invest in. Like they don't care about your pipsqueak company that's not doing any revenue right now, and they don't even care about my like still relatively pipsqueak company that's doing $2.5 million in revenue right now. They care about the company 5 years from now that's doing $50 to $100 million in revenue. And so you have to signal that point. You have to show that you're thinking that big, if you want to raise VC dollars.
It's interesting about that. So here in Atlanta, we do the first Tuesday of every month. We have Tech Tuesdays Atlanta. It's a founder happy hour for tech founders in Atlanta. And so we have David Cohen, Techstars co-founder and Techstars chairman, come through a couple weeks ago and talk about a
Nice.
couple things. And one of the things that he said about the financial model is he said you might as well call it fantasy.xls. But you're saying to put 5 years worth of projections in a deck.
Yeah, and actually those two things aren't conflicting in any way. It is fantasy, but like so is your vision. So is like, you know what I mean? Like, and what is Stardust but not bringing fantasy to reality? Like that's what we do as founders is like we fantasize about the future and then we go make it happen. And like that is what being a founder is all about. And so like if you don't have a vision, if you don't set a target, you cannot possibly realize that vision. You cannot possibly achieve that target. So like it's not about knowing the future. You don't know the future. It's about having a plan and having a vision and setting a target and telling the investor, hey, we've got a plan of how we're going to get to this big. Is it going to work out exactly like this? Absolutely not. But like this is what I'm shooting for.
Yeah. So how can people think? I assume you just want people to go to Forecastr on LinkedIn to connect with you, or is there another way you would like for people to connect with you beyond this?
Yeah, that would be awesome. Like go to Forecastr on LinkedIn. You can also email me anytime, Steven with a V at forecastr.co.
Oh, perfect. I knew you were going to say that. There we go.
Oh, right. Yeah. Yeah, I'm an open book. So hit
I knew you were going to
up.
say that.
I mean, I'm always down to connect with other founders and help. And yeah, I think it takes a village, to build a great company. Right. And we all have our strengths and weaknesses. So
it does. All right. Again, so if you're listening out there, just drop us a comment. If you have a question, let us know where you're coming in from in the comments. Please share this with the other founders in your network on your social media channels so other founders can hear this important conversation. So I'm keen to hear your third comment or your third tip, and then I just want to follow up on something else you said a few moments ago. So what's your third tip to use a financial model to raise capital, Steven?
Yep. Okay. So first tip was think of your model like a story. The second tip was tease the investor with financial projections. The third tip is make it a strategic conversation. And what that tip is all about is like when you tease your investor with the financial projections, what you want to do is get them to set a secondary meeting with you where they're going to walk through the financial model. You're going to walk them through your financial model. That's where more storytelling can happen. That's where more trust and confidence can be built. And in that meeting, in that second meeting, that diligence meeting where you're walking an investor through your financial model, the tip is make it a strategic conversation, because I have done this with lots of founders, and most founders and like their intuition is to like talk a lot about the model and all these formulas and get into the weeds, and like tell the investor kind of a lot of unstructured thoughts that they don't really care about. And like really what you want to do in that meeting, as you want to do in any investor meeting, is like try to surface any concerns or questions the investor has so that you can remove those impediments from investment. And so really when you're walking an investor through your financial model, you want to just start with a very high level strategic conversation. Like, how do you acquire customers? How many customers are you acquiring now? What are your goals over the next 12 to 18 months, right? It's like goals and milestones, big strategic bets that you're placing, remind them how your business works, like just high level strategic elements like that. And then you want to pause and you want to ask a very important question, which is like, what questions or concerns do you have about customer acquisition? Or what questions or concerns do you have about our monetization, right? So that you can bring those to the surface and start having a dialogue with the investor. That's where you're going to drive investment.
And so when you ask a question like that and they give an answer, then you presumably dive into the model and talk about the assumptions underlying the numbers in the model, or no?
Oftentimes not. If the conversation warrants that, yes, that there's a lot of context and nuance here. But I tell people, like, when you walk through a financial model with an investor, like the model is really just an excuse to have a strategic conversation about the numbers. And the model is just like on the screen while you're having these conversations. But a lot of it's just conversation. Just like the deck might be like on the screen while you're having a conversation, but it's like, it's not really the focal point, it's a backdrop, right? And so that's how I would think about it. It's like, I'm going through a high level strategic overview of customer acquisition. I then ask that question. the investor may ask a question like, well, how does your partnerships function work? Like, because that's a question that I have. I'm not even really going to dig into the model to answer that question. I'm just going to start talking to them about how the partnerships function
So
works and how many
this is
customers
interesting.
we acquire from it. Yeah.
So if somebody's a numbers person and they see a bunch of numbers up on the screen in a financial model and they ask you a question, they're going to probably want to dig into. Okay, so my next question. So we're doing like a Zoom, presumably, and the model's up on the screen.
Yep.
Do you? So I had a question here. Hang on a second. Is your thoughts about sending a financial model to a would-be investor?
Yeah, so I never will send a model to an investor before I have that presentation and that walkthrough, but afterwards, always. And I do the same thing with decks. I think a financial model, a pitch deck, these are aids to a story that you are telling. You don't want to be sharing these resources in advance of telling that story. It just shortcuts it, and you lose control. You need to present the deck. You need to present the model, and then share the deck, and then share the model.
Yeah,
Because because you want to control that narrative. You want to color that story before you share it.
yeah, I agree. And so we work with a lot of overlook founders in our community, and that's probably not something most overlook founders are comfortable doing. So most people will say, "Well, send me your deck," right? Um, so what do you recommend in that case? I know, like Anastasia said, send them a one page or like an executive summary or something like that. When we were in Techstars, we were using Build Memo,
Yep.
which is basically a shortened version of the deck. Build Memo, I believe, just shut down. But like, what do you recommend? Because most people are going to be too scared to tell somebody no, they're not going to send them their deck.
Yeah. My recommendation is a very polite and respectful no, and an urge towards the meeting. But if they're very hard on like, I will not meet with you without this deck, then that's a judgment call you have to make as a founder. If you want someone that persnickety and yada yada, if they're a big name, maybe you do. If not, you don't. It depends on how many leads you have in your funnel, yada yada yada.
Yeah.
But if you do want to meet with them, and you do want to share the deck over, then I just share a very short intro deck. I never would really advocate sharing the model. And as far as what like a polite and respectful no looks like, it would be more along the lines of like, hey, really, really appreciate the ask. Like, I can totally understand why you'd want to see the deck or why you'd want to see the model. I'm sure you'd get it right away.
Mm-hmm.
My deck or my model is more of a supporting aid to a conversation. And I think, as you and I both know, it's these conversations that are going to really lead to understanding if this is a good fit for both sides. So I think it's well worth our time to spend 30 minutes and sit down on this. I would absolutely love to do that with you. I have this slot, I have that slot. What works best for you? And then if they come back to that and they're like, look, I get it, man, but like, just sit it to me. Then you got to make the judgment call.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think this is a really interesting point. I feel like the best conversations I had with investors was when I didn't send them my deck in advance, and we got some funding. Yeah, that's really good. I would encourage founders to do what Steven said there. I know you're gonna want to just jump to the hoop. Right, here's the hoop. You want to jump through it? Just send the deck. Well, if you just put together a one pager, like an executive summary, send that instead.
Yeah.
Use that as a teaser, and then walk through your deck in the actual meeting itself. I think that's probably the best approach. You agree?
I do, because like, just to hit one more topic on why this is so important with decks and models, like I think it's important to keep in mind the sheer like the funnel of an investor, right? Like an investor probably will receive maybe 50, maybe 100 different pitches a month. And they might only be able to say yes to one founder, it just depending on like kind of their partnership and their fund size and all that kind of stuff. So like they
Right.
have to say no significantly more than yes. It's
Yeah.
sheer survival for them. So anytime they're
Yeah.
consuming any resource, they are actively looking for reasons to be out. And if you're not in the room when that active looking is taking place, it's very likely that they're going to form an opinion. And once a
Mhm.
human forms an opinion, the human tends to stick into that opinion and not
So
want to
true.
change it, whether that's investment or politics or otherwise. So
So
you want to
true.
be in the room when those opinions are being formed so that you can shape them to your favor.
So true, man. So I meant to ask you about this before. So we have our Kabila community. We got about 400 really great founders in our community now. Like, is it possible for us to offer them some kind of ongoing discount code for members in our Kabila community? You don't have to say what it is now, but is the answer yes? And we can form all that up later, and I'll post it in my community.
Yes, man, I would love to do that, honestly. And I could just tell you right now, like, we'd be happy to do something like 20%. I mean, we do 25% off for Techstars, and that's about as much as we do for them. But I would love to offer 20% off to anybody in the Kabila community.
All right, so cool. So if you want to get the discount using Forecastr, you got to join our community. Go to joinkabila.com, right? And I'll post it in our community what the discount code is. So that's great. So we have like 4 minutes left. Like, what are a couple mistakes that you see founders make when they're building a financial model, Stephen?
Yeah, great question. So one of the biggest mistakes that we see people make when they're building their financial model is not representing the customer acquisition behavior in the model. A lot of like just hard coding customers, or just assuming that customers magically grows by 5% month over month or something like that. Like, that's the biggest mistake we see. Is like you have to think through, okay, like, what are the channels through which you generate leads, and how do you acquire customers, and like model out the customer acquisition mechanics into the financial model. That's a really critical piece. So I'd say that's number one. Number two, the second biggest mistake I see people make is just making like an annual model. Like, it's not like a monthly model that rolls up to annual. It's just like it's only forecasted on an annual basis, based on like annual growth rates or things like that. And the reason why that's such a big mistake is that like that model is basically worthless operationally. Like, when it comes to the month-to-month process of like setting and hitting revenue goals, managing the runway and cash flow of your company, an annual only model is useless.
Yeah, so you have no idea. Because it might be overall at the end of the year, you might be positive cash flow, but a couple months in there, you might be negative, and then you're done.
Yep, exactly. A lot can happen in a year.
A lot can happen in a month.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
All right, cool, man. Well, this is great. If you want to connect with Stephen, you could hit him up, email him, Stephen@forecastr.co. So Forecastr.com wasn't available?
It was not. Forecastr.com is a scammy betting site out of Europe.
Oh, man.
So don't play on Forecastr.com. And yeah, no, not available. So
yeah, well, from my lips to God's ears, one of these days you can have enough money to just go buy that and tell them to run along.
That would be awesome. That would be
awesome. Well, look, Stephen, this is super helpful. I feel like we have these massive turnouts for these things when we're talking to investors, right? Getting the money. But when we do, so we had a conversation early in the week about 3 legal mistakes that early stage founders are missing, not nearly as well attended because it's not sexy. Like, working on a financial model, you only think it's not sexy, but if you ever talk to an investor and they're asking you questions about where these numbers coming from, this is super important, because the sexy part is getting to the bag. But if you don't have a financial model and a sophisticated investor wants to talk to you about it, they won't write you a check, most likely. And it's not that the numbers in the model need to be all perfect and buttoned up. I feel like you tell me this is a way for them to see how you think strategically and analytically.
Yes, that's exactly right. It's so much more about the thought process than it is about the output. And so it's like you're giving a window into your brain into how do you think about the company, and just showcasing the fact that you do think about the company.
Right. You think strategically.
They eat it up.
Yeah. Like, I know Laurel, I think her name is Laurel Hess. She went through Austin. You know Laurel?
Yeah.
Hamper?
Yep.
So I heard her, I'm trying to get her to come do one of these conversations, how she hated financial modeling. She wasn't a numbers person, but she lives in her model now, and she used her model to raise all this money because she lives in her model. So.
Yes, that is the ticket. That is the way it should be done. And my very biased
this is the way.
As the guy who runs a financial modeling company. But I really think it helps. I really do. And I've seen it many times.
100%. All right, y'all. Do you got to run right now? Or do you got 2 seconds?
I have 2 seconds. I don't have anything right after this.
All right, perfect. So thank you so much, Stephen, for coming through. This is super helpful. If you have questions, reach out to Stephen@forecastr.co. Join our Kabila community. I'm going to post a 20% discount for Forecastr in there. If you don't really know how to do financial modeling from the bottom up with Excel spreadsheet, or you just want to find an easier way to do it, check out forecastr.co and head into our community at joinkabila.com and get that 20% discount. I'm going to roll this outro video here, my friend, and we're going to be out. Stand by.
Awesome.